What is good, everybody? It is your host for this episode, Kodey Stoffer of the Playmaker's Corner podcast, and we have some more previews just before we really kick off into our season of recaps and whatnot, where I'm going to review a Conference Carolina squad as well as another one. And so I'm going to go ahead and really just jump right into it. Be sure to listen to all of our other episodes where we preview all of these teams here and talk about their coach and expectations coming into this season, some key players, if they played last season, their record, and kind of looking into the future and seeing how they're going to do. So this squad here for Barton, like I mentioned, it's a Conference Carolina team, and its coach is this program is going to be led by Jazz Vinson. He is currently a running backs coach for the tackle team, so that's very similar to like Amanda Ruler of Eastern. And he has experience as an offensive coordinator in high school, helped turn around a losing program, once scored 88 points in a game as the OC, and so he's been named the head coach of this Barton squad. And they've done a pretty good job at picking up some talent here. Looking through their roster here, I found Aolani Bassa out of Pompano Beach in Florida. She had over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns over her career there. And there's an interesting array of quarterbacks on this roster as I look at Sawyer Rigdon, who has USA football experience. She also won the 2024 Player of the Year and the state championship over in Carolina there with 69 touchdown passes and 7 rushing touchdowns, including the go-ahead rushing touchdown to help her squad secure a state title. She also is a softball player, so that kind of plays into her arm. And then defensively, also recorded a few interceptions. She is a very intriguing prospect and might be battling it out with like a Valerie Ainge-Bata, I want to say is how you say that. But Valerie here, she has experience at quarterback and athlete and defensive back, so she's super versatile and could be a threat anywhere on the field. I definitely think that this team is capable of running some double QB looks just with kind of their configuration. Alyssa Taylor is another quarterback on this roster. She threw for 700 yards in 6 recorded games with a 9 touchdown to 6 INT ratio, but she also has experience as an athlete. So, between Sawyer, Valerie, and Alyssa, they have options. They have depth. That's good. We're going to see who wins out in the battle, but whoever it is going to have weapons to work with, including Valerie herself. I think she's very comfortable with the ball in the air. She has a very natural reaction to the ball, attacking it, especially defensively. At quarterback, she has great core strength to throw off platform, good speed, good athleticism, and just really fun to watch as she zips passes across the field with accuracy and velocity. But like I mentioned, good athlete as well. Defensively, also very special, very instinctual, and just very comfortable, it seems, in the setting of football. Has tackle football experience as well. So I think that she brings a lot to this program that, she could make a push for like a newcomer roster spot, honestly. But the rest of this roster also has some experience on the offensive side of the ball. Deja Reed is somebody who I watched a little bit of film of, and she has a great adjustment to the ball on her very first reception, flipping her shoulders, getting her head flipped, and making an adjustment to catch it on the opposite side of where she was heading, and then turning it into that next gear and scoring a touchdown. She played club ball with Carolina United with a handful of these other athletes as well, including catching some passes from Valerie Ainge-Bata here. And in addition to that, she just has chemistry, it seems like, offensively on her high school career. She had over 600 yards and 10 receiving touchdowns, while defensively having 9 interceptions. So just a ball hawk, and between her and Valerie Ainge, you could have a very solid defensive secondary. And you combine that with Jacayla Robinson over the middle, 15 interceptions, over 100 tackles to her name, a pick 6 in her film, showing good instincts, great reaction time. Seems like a very rangy linebacker. Also had some time on offense, 600 yards, 10 touchdowns in her career, but primarily a defensive playmaker, which would make this team very, very strong in the middle and in the back end as well. Was not able to find a whole lot of rushers on this roster while coming through it here, but like I mentioned, offensively, having some talent here. Grace Chilton is another club experienced player who turns checkdowns into touchdowns and also played with Valerie Ainge here. So you have that. Mariah White comes in after having been nominated as the most outstanding player at her high school program. And then this was a very interesting one. They also bring in a Lila Nathanson here. Just seems to be an absolute gym rat, so you know that she's working hard to contribute to this team, and also has American Ninja Warrior experience, which I thought to be pretty cool and BA. And so you have a lot of different characters from a lot of different experiences and backgrounds, mostly Carolina athletes, which makes a lot of sense here in the Conference Carolina, and then a couple of Florida athletes as well to kind of round out this roster here, which I think really makes for an interesting look for this squad. And so when we look at their schedule here, it's going to look pretty similar to some of the other schedules of the Conference Carolinas. Obviously, you know, they do open up with Virginia Wesleyan on Saturday 28th. Don't know a whole lot about them, but then they have Mount Olives, Mount St. Mary's, they got Ferrum, they got Chowan here. So they have a lot of home games to start the season all the way through mid-March, which is definitely something that you could be pretty ecstatic about. But then they're on the road at Wingate, and I want to say that they're on the road against Mars Hill as well. So those are a couple of other teams in the mix. They then come back home against Erskine and Emmanuel. I do have them favored in those games before going on the road against King and Lise McRae. Both of those teams getting scrimmage action recently and giving us something to kind of judge off of before ending the season at Mount Olive. Now, I think that this is a schedule where 500 is obtainable. I think that they should be in the mix for the Conference Carolina. I don't know if they're my favorite necessarily at this moment. I want to see who they have at rusher, because I think that a rusher just makes such a high impact for a defense, and just not having a proven one like some of these other programs like a Wingate, like a Ferrum, you know, it does cause a little bit of concern for me. But I still think what they have offensively and chemistry-wise is going to be absolutely massive. And so I'm excited to see what this Barton College Bulldog team is going to be able to chew out here as far as wins and produce and have a pretty solid season. But that's my preview for the Barton College Bulldogs. As for this next program that we have here, I'm going to be talking about a program that we actually have a little bit of history on in Bethel here. Now, looking at last year's recap, they went over, but they're hoping to bring back some key returners here and try and make some noise. Their closest game was 21-40 against Graceland. I actually caught that game and did a recap last year of that, so go ahead and go back through the archives for that. But anyways, they do have a few departures here as far as some notables like Xavier Mann, who is a high-volume receiver, interception generator, Regina Mendoza, who helped score a touchdown, Catherine Schmidt, who got a couple of touchdowns, and Tatiana McCollum. Now, they didn't score a whole lot of points, so all of these touchdowns matter, I think, and so, you know, losing some of these contributors is definitely going to hurt. As for some key returners, they bring back Alexia Ponce, Amber Clausen, Kendall Longman, who was the starting quarterback, and Nevaeh Gonzalez, who was an athlete/quarterback for this team. And so they're hoping to continue to build and develop with kind of Nevaeh and Kendall as their core. I want to say Nevaeh, a bit better as an athlete. They tried to do some trickery and tried some new things at quarterback. I think Kendall, you just got to stick with her, try and give her something to work with, something to build with off of that, and just hope that that Kendall to Nevaeh connection continues to develop. They also bring back Mayra Chow here, or bring in Mayra Chow, I should say, who was a linebacker and rusher who notched a few hurries and a few sacks to her name at Chandler. So hoping to get a little bit of a versatile linebacker, but hard to find information on this team. Kind of digging through box scores a little bit to try and find stuff, but not a lot of points generated. But they will, you know, primarily play just within the KCAC here. So on their schedule, opening up will be February 28th, which is a Saturday at home against Kodey. As far as matchups go, this is one where they were able to keep things a little bit closer than some other matchups, but you know, I think I still probably have Kodey favored in that matchup. Then they have Ottawa on the road, followed by William Woods, and Midland, all in a week span in March. So that's going to be a little bit of a tough stretch. Then they also have Southwestern just a little bit shortly after on the road. They then will play Hesston. They did lose to Hesston last year, but Hesston is a new addition to the NAIA landscape here in flag football, and I'm going to talk about them actually in the next segment. But then they have home versus Baker and Kansas Wesleyan and St. Mary before going on the road to Graceland. Now, if I had to be honest with my preview with Bethel here, just based off of what they showed us last year, I think that in a best case scenario that they win 2 games. If I was them, I would really try and get the Kansas Wesleyan JV team on the schedule. I think that this is definitely a program that's still in development. They're still trying to figure out their identity, figure out how to get players to come into the fold and, just commit and compete. I think that against some of the top dogs, it's going to be a rough year in some ways, but I'm not really sure what Southwestern's got going on, if they've lost some players or not. So, that's a game that they could maybe be a little bit closer in, but I still have Southwestern favored. Hesston, I have Hesston favored, and I'll talk about why in just a second here. And then St. Mary is kind of the only other games that I could see them potentially winning. Might be a little bit of a tough year, but I think you just got to commit to this core of Kendall and Nevaeh, see what you got, see what yields from that, develop Chow here a little bit, and then just some of the other players that didn't get in as much, and just try and make it through this season healthy more than anything. They have a lot of unproven talent that's also coming in. They did bring in a handful of arrivals that they're going to have to develop, and they lost, a handful of players as well, but maybe this is a shuffle that they could need and use to establish something and develop towards a program that is, respectable and can garner a few more recruits if they're able to pick up a couple wins and show improvement and an upward trend. But that's kind of my, maybe too honest, but just my Bethel preview and recap from last season for the Threshers here. And the last team that we got here, and probably the last team for previews, honestly, is going to be Hesston. Now, this is a team, like I mentioned, this was an NJCAA team, so that's the junior college ranks last year. They've been competing in the junior college ranks since they've started their flag football program, but they are entering the NAIA fray here in the KCAC. And I actually really like the addition here. I think that they have some interesting players and playmakers, and I think that they bring in someone else who's going to be a high impact level freshman as well. And on top of all of that too, I think that becoming NAIA is going to open up doors to recruit better players, try and retain some Kansas talent as well that's slowly moving up in the ranks as far as states with flag football, or should be, I should say, with the club scene and whatnot there. And just a little something extra to throw in the mix here. But talking about last year, they went 2-8. Some of their closer games, they lost to Graceland 6-25, Pratt Community College 0-12, Bryan and Stratton 7-13, Pratt 0-7. They beat Bethel, as I mentioned in the last segment, 33-6, and they beat the K-Dub JV squad 19-6 before just having a really tough time at nationals last year. But they were a little bit in a transition, so that's something to maybe expect. And they were pretty young last year, and they return a lot of people. The only person who's not on the roster this year who was on it last year is Gracie Coker. But as far as returners, you get Alexis Pabin back, Nayeli Reyes Rodriguez back, Destiny Ortiz, who is one of the leading playmakers on the receiving side of the ball and on offense, notching a lot of yards and receptions. Michaela Lucas, who led the team in flagpoles a couple of times throughout the season. Lauren Payne, who's a very versatile defender, sacks, tackles for loss, interceptions, lots of flagpoles. I think that Lauren can really anchor this defense. You also bring back the quarterback, as I mentioned, Pabin here, who is going to continue to build that rapport. And with this now being a 4-year institution here with the NAIA competitiveness here, you can hold on to these players and continue to develop it. So hopefully that creates some buy-in for those girls who are coming back. And then you also have Lily Espinoza, handful of flagpoles. Once again, not really a master stat sheet for this program, but I dug through some box scores here and was able to find some information. And then they bring in a handful of recruits, but the one I'm most excited for is Vari Rua here. She, on the very first play of her highlight reel, houses an interception. She's got another long rushing touchdown that follows. She's got sticky hands. She's elusive with the ball in her hands, able to typically make the first defender miss. She has tons of quality reps at running back, as well as a route runner at receiver, running some corner routes, making some catches. I think just kind of reviewing her film as a prospect goes, she could work on her vision as a ball carrier as she aims for the sideline a lot and doesn't navigate the interior of the field as well. But she's very reliable, consistent hands, consistent player. She was an offensive player of the year for her high school and maybe even her league, while also being a big-time pass rusher. The year before in her stat sheet out in Vegas, she was getting to the quarterback. So you bring in some versatility. You can get stronger on the defensive side of the ball with a lot of those players coming back, but you add in another X factor here for your squad. And I think that that's going to make Hesston very interesting. And I'm very interested to watch Vari Rua's freshman year here and see how she does. So with all of that being said, I'm going to talk about Hesston here and what we're looking at. Their season begins on February 21st on the road at Kansas Wesleyan. I believe this is going to be the top team for K-Dub. I don't think they're going to be really playing the JV team anymore. But then they have a home game just a week later against Midland to close out February. Then they have 2 games in a week against Southwestern and then University of St. Mary's. Following that, in mid-March, they got Baker and William Woods and Bethel all within a week. They then do play Pratt Community College. There's still lots of cross-play between JUCOs, Community College, D3, D2, NAIA, and that's only going to continue to grow with the game, which is why our rankings are different this year. And then we also got Ottawa starting off April. That's a little brutal. And then it looks like they have a doubleheader on April 4th against Kodey and K-Dub while they're out there, so those games out in Missouri. And then they finish the season at Graceland and at Pratt. All of that being said, I think that there's a few wins on this. I think that they can get more than 2 wins in this season. I look at a team like University of St. Mary. I look at Bethel. I look at Kodey as all winnable games. I look at Pratt. Losing to Pratt, getting swept by Pratt last year definitely stings. And if you want to show that you're worthy of those NAIA ranks, you got to win one of these games, honestly, and at least split the series here with Pratt. And I think that there's 3 wins in here for this first year NAIA team. They could pull off an upset here and there, but I think that experience on this level and consistent level of flag football is going to impact the way that they're able to move and operate here. And so while I think that their season has a little bit more hope than maybe even last year or some other programs in the country, I'm still not 100% convinced that they're going to be like a KCAC contender quite yet. I think that they have to build up that brand and, establish themselves on the NAIA level to get the recruits to warrant that. But I think that they're in a very good spot and a very good start with who they're bringing back, as well as Vari Rua. I think that this is a recruit that could be a high-level impact player for Hesston. So that is my preview on the Hesston Larkins. I know that's a little bit of a short episode here, but we're going to get power rankings out here in a poll going for the whole shebang here. Make sure to double back and listen to the previews that we were able to do. Teams, if you want to get more information out in the future and sooner, we'd really like to start doing these in November and December and just get a head start as much as we can, or any film from fall, because I know that they do a lot of fall tournaments and stuff like that in the off season to prepare for the big shebang here. But we're very excited to cover this season. I have been your host for this episode. Make sure to double back and listen to other hosts like Gino V. Hill and Coach V talk about their programs and their previews, and stay tuned for plenty of more college content. I have been your host for this episode, Kodey Stauffer, signing off. Peace.